15 March 1983. This is Joe Todd. Interview with Mr. Elmer Shackleford.
Okay. My dad had a contract with the butcher there in Stroud to deliver meat out to the agency.
Mm-hmm.
One time going out there.
There it goes. I'm sorry.
Well, you want to start on that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Engine part. I don't know how old I was, probably 5, 6. Dad had a contract with a local butcher in Stroud to deliver meat out to the Sack Fox agency. I remember going out with him one time. He hauled it in a buggy and went out there. And there were houses, kind of like a little town, and I saw something skinned hanging on the porch, and Dad said those were dogs, and then butchered them and hanged them out on the porch. They're going to eat them later on. I didn't know for sure. How come I was having us bring meat out that's eating dogs? But that's the story. That's what he's told me. So that's all I know about that.
Sir, when were you born?
When?
Yes, sir.
November 8, 1903.
And where were you born?
Stroud.
Stroud.
Well, it's close to Stroud. I think it was about halfway between Kendall and Stroud.
Okay. Mrs. Shackleford, when were you born?
November the 12th, 1909.
Where at?
Harper, Kansas. Out in the country.
What was your father's name, sir?
Norman E.
Norman. Was he from Oklahoma?
No, he was born in northwest Missouri. Northwest of St. Joe.
And who was your mother?
Her name was Mary Ann.
Margaret, your mother.
Oh, my mother. Oh, I was thinking my grandmother. Margaret E.
Schaefer.
Schaefer. S-H-A-F-E-R.
Also from Missouri?
Yeah, they was up there. Same neighborhood.
What did your father do?
Well, he was a lot of other. It depends on what time of life you want to talk about. He did more than one thing. He originally was when he was out in the northwest Missouri, when he grew up got big enough to work, he went to work for a rancher, a fellow named Rankin. And then he got married, and then he and my mother decided they were going to move to Oklahoma. So, all around 1900, he took got an immigrant car on the railroad and put his horse and cows in there and furniture. And rode with the car to Stroud, and then my mother and her folks came later.
What made him decide to come to Oklahoma?
I don't have any idea. I don't know how come they decided to come to Oklahoma.
Now, Stroud, is that an Indian territory or Oklahoma territory?
That's Oklahoma territory.
Oklahoma territory.
It was Well, I think it's about 8 miles south of that. That's where the Sac Fox Agency was. And I'm sure it was in Indian Territory.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know just where the line was.
How'd your father get the business of delivering meat to the Indians?
I don't know.
How long did he do that?
I was too little to know anything about it. So I was around 5, 6 years old.
How long did you live in Stroud?
Well, we left here in 1910. I was born in 3, so about 7 years. Pretty close. See, we got out here November the 10th, so I don't know just what day we left down there. Probably 2 or 3 weeks earlier. I don't know anything about that. I was in the first grade when we.
Do you remember Statehood Day? 1907?
No, I don't really. Can't really say that I remember it. I know though, but my dad was had a business right across from the livery stable on Main Street in Stroud, and they were celebrating Statehood Day and got to shooting off guns, and he went out to see what was going on. About that time, here came a bullet, hit in the door facing right beside of him.
What kind of house do you live in Stroud?
Well, we lived in the store building for a little while after he lived out on the farm, and then he moved from the farm to town and went into creamery business. He was a harness maker and shoe repair and bought cream.
What was the name of the store, of the creamery?
I don't know, let's see. He bought out, he was in a store that had the business in it right before that. I don't know what kind it was, but it had something. This store's name was Dyes. That's what on the front of the building, painted on the building. I have a picture of that.
Mm-hmm. How come your parents decided to come out here?
Well, that's kind of a forced deal. Mother had malaria. She got malaria when she stayed in Oklahoma while down the low altitude, and so doctor told my dad he's going to have to get her out into a high, dry climate somewhere. And somehow or another struck up a trade with a fellow that lived down there that had a section of land out in Texas County. So they made a trade.
And you came out here in November of 1907?
No, 1910.
I'm sorry, 1910. Okay. You settled in Guyman?
Well, we was out this farm that he traded for was out in the country, but it's between where Hardesty and Hisland is now. And then he farmed there for 3 years and couldn't make it, so he moved to town to go. And while he was out in the country, he ran a dairy, got a lot of cows, and did a lot of farming and feed. And most of that section was about 3/4 of the section was pasture. He farmed a quarter section.
Did you come out here by train?
We came in 2 covered wagons.
2 covered wagons.
Had two. My dad had the lead wagon, and it had a buggy, rubber-tired buggy, fastened on the lead wagon. Then he hired a guy to drive the other team on another wagon behind.
How long did it take you?
I'm not real sure.
Do you remember the trip?
I remember parts of it. Yeah.
Anything interesting happened along the way?
Well, One thing happened that kind of upset my mother's. The back team ran away, got scared or something, ran away and ran into the back of her rubber tired buggy in the front. It was trailing the lead wagon. I remember waking up and I was sleeping in the front wagon. I remember waking up and hearing her cry, crying about it. She liked horses, and Dad had her rubber tired buggy.
Did it pretty well tear up the buggy?
Yeah, kind of messed up the whole back end of it. I don't know. I can't recall whatever happened to it after we got out here.
What kind of house did you live in when you first came to Guyman?
Well, it was a 2-room native rock house. The walls were about 3 foot thick. And it had one partition in it. One end we had the bedroom, the other end we had everything else.
You started school that year you came here?
No, I started in Stroud.
What's the name of the school in Stroud?
Well, Stroud had 2 schools. One was the East End, and one was the West End. And I went to West End.
You go there how many years?
Just part of the year.
First year?
Yeah.
You finished that first year out here?
Yeah.
What school did you attend out here?
Well, they call it Caple School. C-A-P-L-E. We lived about 1.5 miles from it. We walked to school.
Was that in Guyman or Hardesty?
No, that's in the country between Hardesty and Eastland.
Okay.
That's when we was on the farm. Of course, when we come to Guyman, I was in Guyman school then.
What kind of chores did you do on the farm?
Oh, main thing I remember milking. I had a whole bunch of cows. Well, right at first, when Dad first got the cows, I was milking by hand, but after a while, I was able to buy a milker. So I remember doing that. I wasn't big enough to do a whole lot.
Did you go through high school?
Yeah.
Go to college?
No.
What year did you graduate in high school?
1923.
1923.
You went to Panhandle one year.
Well, I went there several summers, and then I went to Panhandle 1 full year. I don't think I got about 60 hours.
Was there much work for the war effort during World War I in this area?
Well, of course, when that happened, we lived on the farmland.
Were you living in this area during World War I?
No, I lived in Kansas. Didn't move to Oklahoma until 26.
Yeah. Remember Armistice Day when the war ended? 1918.
Well, I don't have much recollection of it. In fact, you see, we was on the whole way we could find out about the war being over was I don't know, I guess we was in Ghana when that happened. It's 14, let's see, 14, 17,
18, 19.
1918.
I remember it very well.
What happened in Kansas?
We lived out on a farm, and we had a telephone, and the day before, the operator in town gave the general a ring and said that the war was over. Well, it was a false alarm. It really was not over till a few hours after that. And I remember that my dad went to the mailbox, which is about 1/4 mile from the house, on the next day and to get the paper. And the the headlines were that the armistice would be signed or was to be signed at a certain hour. And he ran. I can remember seeing him run from the mailbox clear to the house to tell us that the war was over, that it was really true.
What was your father's name?
Crenshaw.
What was his first name?
Will.
What was your mother's name?
Her last name was Bradshaw. Anna Bradshaw. Crenshaw married a Bradshaw.
What did your father do? What kind of work?
He was a farmer, and he also milked a lot of cows. As long as we lived on the farm, he milked cows and did farming. We had an excellent wheat crop in 1918, and he bought a new Model T, and we drove to Colorado, and he drove the Model T to the top of Pikes Peak. As far as we know, the first time a Model T had ever been driven to the top of Pikes Peak. We have a picture of him on the top of Pikes Peak with his new Model T. My mother walked to the top of Pikes Peak, and he thought she would never make it down, so he decided he better drive to the top of Pikes Peak to pick her up. By the time she got up there, by the time he got up there, she'd already started back down. She beat him down.
How long did you live on the farm?
Oh, we left the farm when I was about, I guess I was 9. We moved into Harper, the town of Harper, or really out to the edge. Had a dairy farm then. For a time when I was real small, we lived on a farm up close to Hutchinson, Kansas, up in Reno County, Kansas.
What kind of dairy cow did your father have?
Well, he had 2 kinds. He had Holsteins, had a very large dairy barn, had Holsteins on one side of the dairy barn, Guernseys on the other side of the dairy barn, and mixed the milk because the Guernsey milk was, they weren't Guernseys. Yes, they were Guernseys. And because it would make a richer milk, he delivered milk then in town. But he mixed the Holstein. It didn't have very high butter fat, and the Guernsey did.
Did you help deliver?
I helped milk, but I don't think I ever helped deliver. He had boys that would jump off the wagon. When he first started delivering milk, he had a wagon that was pulled by a horse. But then after that, he had, I don't know what kind they were, but then some kind of an automobile, some kind of a truck that he delivered milk in.
Was the milk delivered in bottles?
Yes.
At that time? What year was that?
Oh, that would have been from about 1920 to, that we had the dairy in Harper, would have been 1920 to 26. Because we still were milking some cows when we moved from Kansas to Oklahoma, and then milked cows in Oklahoma and had a dairy at Alva, Oklahoma.
When did you move to Oklahoma?
What year?
Yeah.
We moved in 1926.
How come your folks decided to come to Oklahoma?
Well, I was ready for college. And I think they thought I was too little to go off to college by myself, so they better just go with me. So they moved to Alva, and I went to school in Alva, at Northwestern.
Yeah. And you went through high school at Harper?
Uh-huh.
What year did you graduate?
26.
26. Were you a flapper?
Oh, I don't think so.
What is a flapper?
Well, I don't know that I have a good definition of a flapper. Somebody that's kind of wild and silly, I guess.
Where does the word come from? Flapper?
I have no idea. Except that they went around.
Lots of people, but no one knows where the word started.
Went around flapping their skirts. I have no idea. Really?
I've talked to lots of people, and there's lots of different ideas of what it is. I can't.
Well, I think it'd be just kind of like what we call a flirt nowadays.
Probably. Did your family do any work for the war effort?
I don't remember except that we bought war bonds. I remember the war bond kind of campaigns, but I don't recall any particular thing. I had an uncle that was of the age to go, but his father, or my grandfather, lived on a farm, and he was the only one left to help with the farm work, and he was deferred or whatever they did, but he had a real good friend that went to France. We kept real close track on his efforts and what he did. But I don't recall that there was any big, campaign.
Did your mother do any knitting for the?
No,
boys?
I don't recall that she did. Now, my grandmother might have. Seems to me like maybe she did, but my mother didn't, I don't think.
Who was your grandmother?
She was Bradshaw, Alice Bradshaw. My grandmother and grandfather came from Missouri to Kansas and homesteaded out there, or homesteaded in Kansas. Oh, in about 80, let me think. I believe they came in 1883.
Do they remember the Civil War?
My grandmother did. I don't recall ever hearing my granddad talk about it very much. But she was young, but she remembered the Civil War. Her dad was what they called a bushwhacker.
What's a bushwhacker?
Well, a bushwhacker is what we call a spy in the Civil War. She remembered that one instance when they came to the door somebody came to the front door hunting him, and he went out the back door, came that close to catching him.
What was his name?
His name was Gwyn. He was William Gwyn, I believe.
Which side was he on?
Well, he was spying for the North. They lived in Missouri. Of course, I think Missouri was a sort of a border state, wasn't it?
Yeah,
They were coming and going,
Yeah.
and
right.
so he was spying for the North.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather had brothers that fought for the South and brothers that fought for the North. I think there were half brothers that were fighting for the North and the others fought for the South.
Did your grandmother ever talk about what happened in those times?
Well, I don't remember that she did too much. She told us once about seeing the Indians come through across their farm, but she said as far as she remembered, they never did bother her or bother the family or bother anything. They would just go marching or walking across, going from one area to the other.
What Indians were they?
I don't have any idea what they were. This was in Missouri, of course.
How come they moved to Kansas? Was it the
Well,
homestead?
yes, they took claim in Kansas. Now, I'm not sure that was, I don't know the circumstances. Whether it was a claim that they finished proving up or whether they took the claim from the beginning. My grandfather was a freighter, I know, when they first came. The railroad, I believe the railroad ended at Harper. And he took freight from Harper to Medicine Lodge. He'd pick up the freight at the end of the railroad. And then with the wagon, horses and wagon, take the freight on to Medicine Lodge.
How far was that?
Oh, from Harper to Medicine Lodge is like 40 miles, is it 45?
I guess.
It would take him 3 days, I remember. He would have to go and then maybe get there in the night and unload and then come back the next day. While he was gone one time, my oldest uncle fell in the well. They had an open well that they had a cover on the top of the well, and they had some cattle that they were feeding. And as I understood, they had a fence that the cattle were in, and this well was on the side of the fence away from the cattle. But the tank where they watered the cattle, of course, was on the cattle side. And my grandmother had to go out and take the top off the well and let the bucket down to get water, and then she'd pour it over into the tank for the cattle. Well, the cattle made some sort of fuss, and they were pushing each other around, and she got interested in what they were doing. When she turned around, my uncle, who was about, probably 18 months old, something like that, wasn't there. And of course he'd fallen down in the well while she was interested in trying to settle the fuss that the cattle were having.
How deep is the well?
I don't know how deep the well was, but her youngest sister was staying with her. And of course my grandfather was gone, moving freight. And so she sent this younger sister to the neighbors to try to get some help, but she had no idea what anybody could do because the casing of the well was, I'm guessing like 12 inches across, maybe 10, 12 inches across, something like that. And normally they kept something on the top of it with a big rock on it. But it was open then because she'd been getting water out of it. Well, about the time that she had sent the sister to the neighbors, it dawned on her that the bucket wasn't there either. And so she reached down and took hold of the rope to pull the bucket up out of the well. And when she got it up, my uncle was sitting on the top of the bucket.
Talking about wells, that when we moved to the farm down there from Stroud, besides this rock house, it had the 3-foot walls. Well, it had a well that had been dug by hand. It was 90 feet deep, and they dug that with it was 6 foot wide at the top, and they dug that with spades and hauled it up on a bucket of rope, dirt.
That take a while to dig.
Yeah, it was dug when we got there, but it was. I remember when I looked down in it, and the reflection of the light from the top of the well, and looking down in it, looked like it's about half a dollar. You can see the water reflection.
Mm-hmm.
The size of it looked like about half a dollar.
My other grandfather had some connection with the Indians in Oklahoma. He lived in Arkansas City, which is right on the line.
Yeah.
And he, I don't know exactly how, but it seemed like the I don't know whether it was the end of the railroad or whether the railroad didn't go any farther than that. But he took freight to Indian Territory from Winfield and Arkansas City, down that way. And that was the grandfather on the other side, my dad's.
What years did he do this?
Well, now that was way back before I was born. That would have been I would say that was before the run, so it's going to have to be back almost, think a little bit, probably 1890s,
Yeah.
somewhere.
What
in
was
there.
his name?
His name was Monroe. But he ran a freight line for a good long while. Then he was murdered later on. He went, I guess it was to Nebraska. The story is rather conflicting. But anyway, he took quite a sizable amount of money. He'd saved his money, and he had heard of some land that was for sale, and either in northern Kansas or in southern Nebraska. Had gone up there to look at it, and he had picked up what we call a hitchhiker, some fellow that was going that way, I guess just for company. And this fellow robbed him and killed him. And they found it out by a card that was in his pocket that he had written to his wife. And the wife of the fellow that killed him was the one that turned him in to the officers. She suspected something. He had a wagon and a team of horses that he couldn't account for. And she found blood on his shirt, I believe. She questioned him somewhat. After it was all said and done, there were 2 widow women and I believe 7 orphan children. They executed the man who did the murder.
And his wife turned him in.
I taught school in the Dust Bowl days, out in the country.
Yeah, we're coming to that. Let me see. What kind of chores did you do around the house as a girl?
Oh, fed the chickens, gathered the eggs, milked the cows.
Cook the cook shack.
Yeah, my dad had a threshing machine for several years. I cooked in the cook shack, or helped cook in the cook shack.
How does a thrashing machine work?
Well, there are 2 sections of what you would call the rig, the tractor, or the engine, and the separator. And they are connected by a belt that's powered from the tractor that runs the, I don't know what you call that thing, but it's the wheel on the separator that moves that, and then it just moves the grain down through the separator and it beats it out. The straw goes out one way and the grain goes out the other way. That isn't a very good explanation.
It helps.
Well, her dad was, in those days, didn't have a combine like we do now. They had a header and a barge. And they'd take this barge and empty the barge out onto a stack. And they'd have stacks scattered around over the farm. Or maybe they'd take it all in one spot. And then her dad, when he'd come along maybe a month or 2 after harvest was, after the wheat was stacked, he'd come along and thrash all these stacks.
Well, they did it 2 ways. They could either cut with the header and stack it, or they could cut with the binder and bind it into bundles, and then they'd stack the bundles. Of course, the binder had a lot more straw in it than the header did. It was harder to handle.
When did they first bring out the combine?
I'm not sure, but I would say about 1930, somewhere along in there. Do you remember?
It might have been a little bit before that, I'm not sure.
From 28 to 30, probably. Because we still had a thrashing machine in 27. There weren't very many combines being used, if any, in 27.
And when your folks moved to Alva, did they buy a farm?
No, they lived at the edge of town in Alva and ran a dairy farm. For a while they milked cows, and then for a while they bought milk and processed it, put in a pasteurizing plant.
What was the name of the dairy in Alva?
Hillcrest Dairy.
Hillcrest.
It's south of the college. Well, 2 blocks.
You still there?
No, I don't think there's any dairy there now. Gold Spot from Enid bought it out and operated it for a while, but I don't believe they're operating it now.
What'd you study in college?
English was my major.
What years you graduated?
Graduated in 29.
29.
Went to summer school, winter school, graduated in 29.
When'd you all meet?
31. I came out here to teach school.
So you came to Guyman to teach.
I taught first in Bremen, Oklahoma. It's a short distance north of Blackwell, little town just north of Blackwell.
Teach English?
Uh-huh.
What school did you teach in?
It was Bremen High School. I taught English and Spanish. I took Spanish in college. The Spanish was one of my minors. History was another minor, and I had quite a bit of art. Had enough for a minor in art as well.
Played the orchestra too.
What were you doing in Guyman when you all met?
I was working at a First National Bank.
As a teller?
Well, I started at the bottom and went up to, well, I guess that's probably teller when I met her. See, we got married in 33 and I went to work in the bank at 26. So I worked up from just above the janitor on up to the tower.
Did the bank close in the Depression?
Yeah. Just, I expect you've heard the story several times about McMurray closing the banks after President Roosevelt shut things down.
Not McMurray, Murray. Governor Murray.
Yeah, Governor Murray.
No.
Bill Murray.
He closed all the banks?
See, when the president closed things, by then the Oklahoma banks, they tried to go ahead and do business. And Murray, so the banks in Guyman, I don't know whether they did all the stand up, and the banks in Guyman, they just kept operating. And so he sent word out here that first all the closed down, and he sent militia out. So banks closed for, they closed their doors, but they still went ahead and had to process the checks that they had just before they closed, you see. So we went to work several days, kind of kept it operating. Checks would come in from Federal Reserve Bank and things like that. But everything kind of pretty well got shut down for a while.
What year was it the banks closed?
Well, it'd be 33.
33.
I mean, that's right.
When the stock market crashed, what were you all doing? Did that affect you all at all?
Well, of course, I knew about the bank. It didn't particularly affect me personally. But of course, it made it bad on a lot of people that were in the higher finances than I was.
And you're married in 33. Did the Depression affect you besides the bank closing?
Well, yeah. I was, of course, I was a teller then at that time, and I could tell, you know, the people that didn't have any money, and they started the WPA, Works Progress Administration, built a high school up here with that help. And everybody didn't hardly have any money. And I remember whenever they'd have court, county court, people would go up men would go to the courthouse and the trial, where the brothers had the trial, and try to get on the jury, where they get $3 a day for jury service. They had to work out all kinds of schemes, try to get by.
How did the Depression affect you?
I don't recall it affected us too much because we always had a big garden. We always had chickens. We always had cows, which gave us plenty to eat. And we were used to doing without things. If we didn't have it, we just didn't have it. So I don't think it bothered us too much.
What was your average meals like in the Depression?
Oh, pretty good, I
Pretty
think.
good.
You butchered and
We did our own butchering and
What, cattle, hogs?
both.
Both. Did you make head cheese?
I've heard of that. I don't know whether my folks ever did or not. When we lived out on the farm, then neighbors, we went with the neighbors and butchered, sort of a community project. And I think they used everything but the squeal, but I don't recall just exactly how they did it.
My mother made head cheese, but my dad butchered when he was on the farm.
She did.
Of course, that was before the Depression.
Yeah.
That was back in the teens, 14, 15, 10s, along in there.
What
That
time?
was- That was good stuff too. They take the skull of the animal and get all the meat off of it. They could. And, I guess they did use everything but the eyes. I know we had brains. Eat the brains separate, and then made the head's cheese and put it in kind of like a. Well, she had take this meat and cook it, and then cut it up in just small pieces and tear it apart, and then she would mash it down into a crock or a jar, one of these tall crocks, and put a lid on top of it.
Sometimes I think they ran it through a meat grinder.
What time of year did you butcher?
Well, after the first frost, generally.
November was always a good butchering month.
We had to let it get cold, you see, because you don't have refrigeration, so you had to hang your meat up and let it cool out on the windmill tower somewhere where you can hang it up.
Did you cure your own hams?
Well, some, I don't know, just, we had a process where we used sugar, I remember that part, but I don't know a whole lot about it.
We did. We had a big barrel. We put the hams, shoulders down in the barrel, and put, it wasn't pure salt. It was a salt mixed with brown sugar and a bunch of other preservatives, I think, and spices. Covered up till it cured out.
So it was covered with this salt.
Mhm.
I thought ours tasted a lot different than it tastes now.
They'd smoke it some too, but we never did have a smokehouse. We bought what you call prepared smoke. Smoke in a bottle.
You'd paint it.
And after it was cured out in this salt solution, then you'd paint it with this smoke. It's liquid smoke.
And you say you taught school in the Depression?
Yeah.
Where at?
In the 30s.
I taught in Bremen in 29, 30, and 30 and 31. Came out here in 31 and taught. We got married in 33. The Guyman School District would not hire married women to teach. And so I did not teach in 33 and 34. Then I went to the country in 34 and 35 and 35 and 36. And then Guyman decided that they believed they'd hire married teachers, so I came back to Guyman.
How come they wouldn't hire married women?
Oh, I guess they thought they might have family and then they'd be embarrassed.
Well, they thought thought the men were supposed to make the living. I mean, you know, if the woman would keep the man from being teaching school, it was against that.
I guess jobs were scarce maybe, and they thought that one breadwinner in the family was enough. I don't know exactly what their reasons were.
Where did the dust storm start?
I remember the first dust storm I encountered was in the winter of 32 and 33. And now I can't remember whether it was in, I would say early 33.
Well, that's pretty close.
There might have been some before that, but I don't recall any the first winter I was out here. But the second winter I was out here, I do remember some
What
dirt
caused
storms.
those dust storms? How come they're so bad?
Well, the farmers had the ground all tilled, and there wasn't anything to hold the soil.
Well, it's still shallow with a one-way, not deep with a plow. And then when it got such dry weather, we always have wind out here to some extent, but then it just stirred it up. Began way up in Colorado and just kept coming all this way.
It started up in Dakotas. This whole country here east of the Rockies was in farmland because of the, well, I guess, I don't know why we started planting so much wheat, but that's what did it. And then during about in the 30s, seemed like we had a lot of extra wind that we didn't used to have. Of course, when they first came out here, it was all buffalo grass.
The dust storm started in 33. How long did they last? For how many years?
It's 8 or 10. Maybe.
Well, I'd say close to 10 years.
So they finally broke in what, the early 40s?
I would say so.
See, they started their conservation, soil conservation long back then when they found out what the problem was. So the government came in and had conservation districts, and they planted trees to what they call a tree belt in strips so wide and so long to break up the sweep of the wind. So
Was that WPA or CCC?
no, that wasn't either one.
Either one?
That was soil conservation. See, the WPA, that was a Works Progress Administration, and it was the government furnished the money and put people to work. In other words, a made work program. They built schoolhouses and then the young people, they had the CCC, that's for the younger people, so they could have something to do. But there were 3 different deals.
What's the worst dust storm you remember?
Well, the scariest one was the first one that came rolling in.
How long did it last?
Oh, the wind blew for probably a day or something like that. But you see, when it first came in, it just looked like a big bunch of smoke in the horizon. Just a bank of smoke. Looked like the world was on fire over in there. You can see it rolling, smoke roll, just kind of like an oil well fire. It would billow like that.
It was clear across the horizon,
And
though.
it started from one side to the other. Of course, you just sitting real low, and then, of course, it get wider as it got closer.
Yeah.
And one of the things, when that big column of smoke, or dust, fell down over you, it'd be pitch dark. And maybe that would last 30 minutes, and then the light commenced to get light again, because then the wind would hit after this dust storm. After the dust had already gone over us. The hard wind, of course, there was a little breeze with it, but the hard wind was pushing this dirt ahead of it.
How'd you keep the dust out of your house?
You didn't. We taped the windows, taped around the windows. You can put, some kind of paper on the outside of your windows, or later, I don't think we used cellophane so much right at first, but later there would be you could buy this heavy, what would you call it, plastic, I guess, and you could put that on the outside of your windows, but there was no way to keep it out completely. No way.
It come down through the ceiling up in
We,
the rafters.
I remember that I taped all of the windows on seemed like it was worst from the north. And I taped all of the windows, not only the sash of the window, but around the window casing too, because it would come in there. And it helped, but there's no way you could keep it all out. You just couldn't. You just had to clean it up.
What were you two doing when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor?
We were in Dr. Hayes' office Sunday afternoon when the word came that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. Our son was down there for his 6 months, I guess it was 6 months. No, it wasn't 6 months. It was
just for a checkup.
It was a checkup anyway. He was born in October, 6 weeks checkup probably. He was born in October, last of October. And Dr. Hayes said, well, I'll be down at the office on Sunday afternoon. Just bring him down there. So we just walked from the house down to Dr. Hayes' office. We walked in, he said, I just now heard on the radio that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And then, of course, you didn't get much more information for a while because they stopped everything.
What was your first reaction?
My first reaction, I guess, was, well, now let's see, where is Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, that would be the first question. Mm-hmm. And then that question came in my mind, what we're going to do now with all these battleships sunk.
And of course, the Oklahoma was sunk there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Battleship Oklahoma.
The Arizona is the one that there were so many that were killed, I believe, in the Arizona.
Was it much work for the war effort in Guyman during the Second World War?
Well, they'd have bond drives quite a bit. And there was quite a bit of, this really wouldn't answer your questions, because there's quite a lot of hatred against, see, there's quite a few people out here of German descent.
No, this was Second World War, Japanese people.
Oh, you're talking about Japan? Oh, yeah.
The Second World War.
It was the First World, no?
First World War was the Germans. Of course, we were allies of the Germans in the Second World War.
No. That was Hitler.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And several, guys.
Yeah, because
threatened some German descent people, but I don't think they ever did much about it.
my youngest brother went to France during the Second World War. Leo went to France during the Second World War. Yeah. That's our brother-in-law.
Yeah. There's a farmer over by Boise City that had 2 Japanese families working for him during the war.
There was a big contingent of Japanese that they moved from California, I think, out into that area, out into Cimarron County, weren't they?
Yeah, it was.
Around
I don't know just how many, but they scattered them, took them out of California and scattered them around over the United States. I don't know just where else.
Was there a big celebration here when the war ended?
You know, I can't remember.
I don't know. involved in it.
Do you remember the bombing of Boy City?
The what?
Bombing of Boy City.
No,
Boy City was bombed during the war.
I don't remember that.
Seems like the situation is kind of a vague recollection of some kind of.
You're pretty smart. You were talking about dirt storms a while ago. I taught school out in the country right in the middle of those dirt storms.
How'd you,
Right in the worst years of
how'd
dirt
you
storms.
breathe in the dust storms?
Oh,
But actually, for your face,
some people bought gas masks, more of them.
Were there many people who died from the dust storms?
Yes, I would say after effects of the dirt storms. A lot of people, older people died with pneumonia, what they call dust pneumonia.
I was going to ask, I'm going to regress for a bit, and ask about the flu epidemic of 1918.
I had it.
You had it.
I had it in 1918, and I have never really had the flu since.
That was up in Kansas.
Mhm.
What about out here?
yeah, there was flu out here. A lot of people died from it. I don't know of any close relatives that died.
What kind of medicines they use on you?
I don't remember any particular medication that they used at that time. Now, about 4 years after that was when they first started vaccinating for diphtheria and using some of those, what we would call more modern medications. But at the time we had the flu, I don't recall any particular medication. I remember that our neighbor came over with some chicken broth, a big jar of chicken broth. My dad and I were the ones that had the flu the worst.
Yeah.
And I don't think my mother, if I remember, she didn't have the flu. Or if she did, she didn't have it very bad. And my brothers were younger than I was. And I don't recall that they had the flu, but my dad was very, very sick with the flu, and I had it. It was pretty bad. But I can't recall, except just old remedies that you'd use for a severe cold or something of that sort. We just sort of wrote it out, I think.
What were some of the remedies for a cold?
Oh, rub your chest with goose grease mixed with coal oil or something, or turpentine or something of that sort.
To make a, what they call a poultice.
Onion poultice they used quite a bit.
Over your, take a flannel rag and soak it with that and then fasten it on, pin it on your underclothes, put it over your chest. And that was used quite a bit, I think, in flu time too.
What an acidity bag?
Oh, my grandmother believed in acidity. My uncle was going on the train to go down Texas somewhere to visit his girlfriend. And she made him wear an acidity bag on the train so that he wouldn't get the flu or while he was gone on that train trip.
What did an acidity bag consist of?
Whatever acidity is a kind of a gum-looking stuff, kind of a grayish-looking gum, and
Real dark brown.
you just tied it into a rag. Just put it into a rag and tied a knot around it to hold it in there. Then put it on a string, put it around your neck. Real sophisticated.
Well, my mother said they really worked because no one would get close enough to you to spread any germs.
Well, that if it worked, that would be the reason.
But she said she had to wear them and they stunk the high end of it.
Yeah, but
I can still smell
I had
acidity.
one around my neck.
What caused that flu epidemic?
I don't know.
1918.
I have no idea. I think they blamed it somewhat on the war, didn't they?
Well, I heard that some of the soldier boys brought it back from Europe.
That's what they
That's
blamed
what
it
I
on, I
heard.
think, but
Yeah.
I don't know that anybody could prove that.
During the 30s and the 40s, what kind of work were you doing? You still at the bank?
I quit the bank in 44. I worked at the bank from 26 to 44, and then I worked in the lumberyard from 44 to, well, I had a stroke in 65. And I had to quit and then for a while, and then the lumberyard sold. So I was in the lumberyard about 24 years, and in the bank 18. And I taught 2 years at country school right after graduation out of high school.
Now, did you work all the time while the bank was closed? Were you still working there?
Yeah.
What were you doing? Of course, you mentioned processing the
Well,
checks.
there wasn't a whole lot to do. We just one or two of us would be there all the time.
The bank wasn't closed very long,
No, it
just a few days.
How many kids you have?
we had a son and daughter.
How many grandkids?
None.
None.
One son-in-law.
Trying to think. What else?
When I was teaching school out in the country, when the dirt storms, one particular day the dirt blew so bad that we just couldn't breathe inside the building. Of course, it was open more or less. The windows weren't tight. And about 10 o'clock in the morning, I guess it was, I decided that I just have to get the kids home because they just couldn't breathe. And I took half of them that went, I think I took the ones that I took half of them home, the ones that lived west of the schoolhouse. Took this older boy with me. He was J.T. Clausen. And then I went back to the schoolhouse and picked up the rest of them and took them home, the ones that lived east. And he lived east, so I dropped him off where he lived and came to town. And that, the schoolhouse was about 7 miles straight east on Highway 3 from Guyman. And I couldn't see the road, of course it wasn't paved. I couldn't see, the only way I could get my bearings, that I could see the tops of the telephone posts. And so I drove watching the tops of the telephone posts, and when I got out here to the corner of town, the southeast corner of Guyman, instead of making that curve to come into town, I still followed the telephone post and went the section line and got south end of Main Street and came on in. And when I got home, I had put on an old smock and tied a bandana around my head. And when I got home, I looked like Aunt Jemima. And I opened my mouth and it looked like I'd been eating chocolate candy.
Do you recall a dust storm called the Black Duster?
Uh-huh.
When
That was a Sunday afternoon, I believe, is the one that they usually talk about
Well,
as
that was
Black
really
Duster.
the first one.
Well, now that was, I was teaching out at New Bethel, I think, that same year, because that happened on Sunday afternoon, and I think I went to school the next day, so it would have been, there were some before that, because I remember that one that blew up, and it blew up so cold, and that was in 33, and it blew in the night. But as far as the rolling dirt storms were concerned, that was the first rolling one, I think they called the Black Duster. That's because it just got
It must have been
dark.
later one, because This the first one that anybody ever saw roll in like that. I don't know when it was. But it's,
Now that might have been before I was even here.
I don't
then.
know whether that was called the Black Dust or not, but the first one that rolled in here, didn't anybody hardly know what it was, and the businessmen downtown, business people, clerks, they ran to the basements of the buildings around, and everybody was scared to death pretty near it.
Well, that one would have had to have been earlier then, because the one I remember rolling in so black was after we were married and we were living down there on Roosevelt Street, and we stood out there and watched it come in from the north.
Yeah, it's a different one. Of course, there's a lot of them. I don't know what they mean by black dust because there was a lot of those things.
That everything would just get black.
Yeah.
Did you all know Boss Neff?
No, not really. You probably
Yes,
did.
I knew him.
What was he like?
Boss of the dad of the whole bunch. He's real quiet, kind of a large man, and he gave the appearance of being prosperous. What's more, nice cowboy clothes, nice boots. That's the main thing I remember about him. It's just offhand kind of thing.
When did he first come to this country?
I don't really know. But he's over east of here. He's kind of more of a hooker citizen, I guess you could say, rather than a guyman person. But I remember him real well.
You familiar with the 101 Ranch over here by Kenton, that area?
I know there's one over there, but I don't.
The 101 Ranch was over by in Central Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Well, there's one by Ponca City, the Miller Brothers.
That's the Miller
I
Brothers.
Another
remember-
one out here,
Yeah,
there's
they-
no connection between the two.
They call one of them 101.
Yeah.
Well, out here.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, how come there are two of them and not connected? Next question. You don't have to answer if you don't want. Who is the biggest bootlegger in the area?
I don't know. I'm not too.
I'm not going to tell you that, but I think I know.
Well, can you tell me how he delivered his?
No, I can tell you how one up in Kansas delivered his wares. He delivered it in milk bottles that were painted white on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
But here, I don't know.
Well, let's see. I wouldn't want to say either. But when you said bootlegger, well, I thought Ku Klux Klan.
That would hardly be any connection.
I know, but it was a secret deal. It's about like that.
Was there much of a Klan membership in this area?
I don't think so.
The underground.
Underground? Well, there are many blacks out here.
Mm-hmm. That was a no-no.
Well, I think we have a good interview.
My dad got a letter one time from the Ku Klux Klan inviting him to join.
Did he?
No.
But there was a lot of businessmen and guymen that were Ku Kluxers. There's the only one knew about it, practically. They never did surface and do anything, I guess it was just maybe for the novelty of more than anything. I don't know for sure.
Let me see. What else you want to tell me?
I really don't know anything else, I don't suppose.
What kind of mischief you get into as a child?
What again?
What kind of mischief did you get into as a child?
With the child.
Yeah.
As a child.
As a child.
As a child?
She was a doll. She wouldn't get in any trouble.
No, I don't know that I ever got into a whale of a lot of mischief. We did a lot of things that I wouldn't have let my children do, like jump out of the barn loft and jump off the bridge into the creek and things like that. But I don't know.
What kind of games you play as a child?
Oh, played a lot of hopscotch, a lot of marbles, a lot of black man,
Hide and seek.
lots of hide and seek. My family was a game-playing family, the whole bunch of them. All the neighbor kids.
Well,
I chased a steel hook off of a wagon hub around over town a lot of time. Lots of time.
That was fun.
I don't know how many miles I did that. Take the hook off a barrel and cut about a 14, 15 inch chunk out of it and fasten that in the middle on a stick about so it be reach down to just above the ground a few inches. And take the rim off of the wagon hub and let that run down this stick down to the ground and you push it, keep it going, keep it rolling.
how'd you turn it?
What?
How'd you turn it?
Or you just
Turn the stick.
turn your stick and that curve will just raise up on it. It'll hit the outside edge and then go this way and hit this edge and turn that way. Only one did a problem to it. But you didn't even have to have a driver's license.
He had a pretty interview, I think.
Oh,
And it jumped around, I thought. That's anything you can think of after you're past that phase of it, probably don't want to go back on, I guess.
before we had a car, well, no, it wasn't before we had a car. Our first car was what was that? I don't think I told you.
Rio, wasn't it?
I started to say Rio and then I started to say Maxwell.
Maxwell and Rio, probably a Maxwell.
But my dad bought it when I was about 3, I think. And then we moved to my grandfather's farm up in Reno County, and he bought a car. Well, maybe he bought the car up there. But anyway, he drove it home, and he said to my mother, "Come out, I want to show you how I can drive into the barn." We had a barn that had stalls on one side and granaries on the other side, and it had a central area where the machinery was stored. Well, he wanted to show her how he could drive into that central area and park the car. So she went out to see what a good driver he was, and he drove into the barn all right. Right into the side of it.
I can tell you about the first car I saw
Yeah,
back in Stroud. It was a Stanley steamer. Then it went putting down the main street of Stroud, and people went out along that streets, watched it. It was running by steam.
How fast would they go?
Oh, I don't expect they went more than 3 or 4 miles an hour. That's as far fast as he went. Now, of course, he might have been able to go a little faster. But I guess he wanted everybody to see him pretty good. But then everybody had a car. But it was just like a buggy with hard, the rubber, you know, hard rubber, like a rubber tire boat. And he's sitting up there in the front. In fact, he's sitting on the right-hand side. And he had a lever, and well, instead of having a wheel, I just had a handle.
Yeah.
And you got with that.
Yep.
And, this steam would go puffing out behind.
Do you remember much about the Sac and Fox Indians? What they looked like? Or?
No, of course I was. They were most of them in blankets and things like that. And they had, I don't understand exactly. See, there's on a reservation, and they had these houses, but there were wigwams scattered all around among them. Anyhow, they were just down south of Deep Fork River.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I don't guess so. We have any interest as far as Oklahoma's concerned.
Okay. Thank you.
I